A moment that changed everything. They say the small things often change your life, not big events, but quiet, unexpected moments. It happened during a time when I felt emotionally empty. Life had become repetitive. Each day blended into the next, with nothing to look forward to. I wasn't expecting anything exciting anymore. That's when it started. Something different, something I didn't see coming. It began with a laugh in the kitchen. It was a regular Thursday afternoon. I was tired, hair tied up, apron on, just going through the motions of the day. Everything felt routine. Then he walked in. His name is David, my stepson. He came home from college for a short visit while his dad was away on a work trip. We'd always gotten along well, sharing an easy, playful connection. We understood each other in a quiet way that didn't need words. But that day felt different. He leaned against the counter and looked at me, not like I was just his stepmom or someone who reminded him to clean up, but like he saw me as a real person, like I was someone new. I had been making custard and decided to let him try it. I offered him a spoonful like I had done many times before, but this time there was a pause. He stared at me, not saying a word. Then he made a small, flirty comment. I laughed it off at first. Just a joke, I thought. But when I moved the spoon closer, he leaned in gently, tasting it in a way that felt strangely intimate. His eyes never left mine. And that's when I realized this wasn't about food. It wasn't even about the moment. It was about something deeper that neither of us had spoken out loud. A quiet shift we both felt but weren't ready to admit. The silence between us said everything. A taste of something more. People often say life can shift in a single moment, not because of anything dramatic, but because of something small and unexpected. It might be a laugh, a glance, a shared silence. That's how it started for me. It was an ordinary Thursday. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing my apron, tired from the usual routine. Everything felt the same as it had for years. Quiet, predictable, dull. I wasn't expecting anything to change. Then David walked in. He's my stepson. He was home from college for a short stay while his father, my husband, was away on business. Nothing about his visit seemed unusual at first. We've always gotten along. There's been this quiet connection between us, playful at times, like we understood each other in a way no one else did. But that day felt different. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and gave me a look. Not as his dad's wife, not as someone who asked him to take out the trash, but as someone new. Like he was seeing me for the first time. I had made some custard and jokingly offered him a taste. He smiled, said something light-hearted. I thought it was just a joke. I brought the spoon closer. He leaned in slowly and tasted it, his lips brushing the cold metal gently, his eyes locked on mine. That's when I felt it. Something shift. It wasn't about the custard, it was about the moment, the silence, the closeness, the way the air between us changed. I should have laughed it off, pulled back, said something to break the tension, but I didn't. I froze, maybe even leaned in a little. Part of me had been craving that feeling for years. Not just attention, but to feel seen again, to feel real. I had been fading for a long time. Greg, my husband, is a good man on paper, steady, responsible, polite. But over the years he became more like a shadow, always distracted, always tired. Even when he was home, he wasn't really there. We barely spoke, we didn't touch, we just existed beside each other like strangers. And in that empty space, David returned. No longer the boy I used to help with homework and cook lunch for, but a grown man with a sharp look and quiet confidence. He wasn't the same kid who once needed me, and I wasn't just the woman who raised him anymore. When he looked at me in the kitchen, I felt everything all at once. Guilt, excitement, fear, and a strange sense of being alive. Was it wrong? Yes. Was it just about one moment? This wasn't just a story about a dessert shared in the kitchen. It was about all the years of feeling invisible, about longing to be noticed, to be touched, to be wanted. What happened after that moment is something I still think about at night, playing it over in my head. Could I go back and change it? I'm not sure I would. That day was the beginning of something I never expected. And even though I wish it had started differently, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten, what it feels like to feel again. Emotional honesty. I never meant for it to happen, but I found myself emotionally drawn to someone outside my relationship. That connection crept in quietly, and now I'm left tangled in guilt and confusion. I still care deeply for Greg. That hasn't changed, but this unexpected bond stirred feelings I thought I'd long buried. It made me feel seen again, and that, more than anything, shook me. At first I tried to brush it off. He was just home for a short break between classes, just passing through. But there was something different about him. A calm confidence, a way of listening that didn't feel polite. It felt genuine. He remembered things I said, asked follow-up questions, noticed little details, the kind of things Greg hadn't acknowledged in years. He'd come into the kitchen just to ask what I was cooking. He'd help with the groceries without being asked. He laughed at stories I hadn't told in ages, stories that once meant something, and somehow he made them feel important again. At first I told myself he was just being thoughtful, polite, nothing more. But when you've gone so long without affection, even the smallest gestures feel enormous, like sunlight through a crack in the wall. I found myself listening for the sound of his footsteps, looking forward to the way he'd lean against the doorway and offer to taste whatever I was making. Those moments, just the two of us, laughing, talking, sharing space, they felt innocent. And maybe they were. But the truth is, they meant more to me than I wanted to admit. Unspoken things. Yet, beneath all the lightness, something lingered, something I hadn't wanted to name, yet couldn't ignore. It wasn't in what he said, it was in how present he was when I spoke, how he noticed me when I thought no one did, and how in those rare moments when our eyes met from across the room, something in me shifted. It was subtle, but it stayed with me. I've been holding this inside for too long, and I can't pretend anymore. Somewhere along the way, I formed a connection I never meant to, with someone outside my relationship. It's not easy to admit, but it's the truth. I care for Greg, but what I felt was real, unexpected, overwhelming, and deeply confusing. I don't want to live in silence about it, not with myself and not with him. I just hope there's a way to speak it without destroying everything we've built. It didn't take much, but after so many years of feeling invisible, even the smallest gestures meant everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind that drapes the kitchen in golden light when the house is quiet and Greg is on yet another call. I had music playing softly in the background, and I was elbow deep in a custard recipe I hadn't touched in years. It felt good to have something to focus on, something simple and comforting. Then the door creaked. Liam. He leaned against the frame, watching me, his face calm, warm, and again, this weight returned to my chest. I've tried to come to terms with it, this unexpected pull, this ache that feels both wrong and honest. It's not just confusion, it's grief for what I've been missing and guilt for finding it in the wrong place. I turned to him and smiled. "You always seem to show up when something sweet's in the air," he chuckled, eyes still fixed on me. "Your presence makes it hard to stay away." That caught me off guard. He wore a plain white shirt. His hair was messy, like he'd just rolled out of bed, but it wasn't the shirt or the hair. It was the way he looked at me, quiet, focused, undeniably present. I held out the spoon. "Here, tell me if it's too sweet." He didn't move, just smiled slowly, arms crossed. "Only if you serve it like a proper chef." I froze for just a second, then laughed it off. "Oh, so now I'm your personal pastry chef." He didn't answer. He just kept looking at me. The line that blurred. He approached slowly, deliberately, calm, sure. By the time he stood before me, the room felt too quiet. I lifted the spoon again, holding it between us like a fragile offering. He leaned in, tasted the custard, his eyes searching for something beyond flavor. A silence hung there, heavy and breathless. He closed his eyes, briefly. When they opened again, he kept looking at me, steady, unflinching. I wasn't smiling anymore. Just holding his gaze, I let out a laugh, too loud, too quick. Then I turned, rinsing the spoon with trembling hands. The kitchen, once golden and soft, felt colder. I told myself it was nothing, a fleeting moment, a harmless tease, but it stayed with me. His gaze didn't falter, he didn't move. It was as if he was waiting for me to acknowledge something we both feared. A truth that hovered just beyond the surface. That gaze, it didn't come from a boy. And the worst part, I think I enjoyed it. I regret it. I regret how warm I felt as he walked away. I regret turning my head to watch him disappear down the hall. But I did. What hurts more than anything? I didn't feel ashamed. I hadn't crossed a line yet, but I felt alive, as though someone had lit a candle inside me after years of darkness. After that day in the kitchen, everything felt different. Liam's laughter rang through the house, breaking through the silence that had weighed down the walls for years. He lingered in doorways after conversations, hesitant to leave, like maybe he didn't want to. And in a crowded room, his eyes would find mine. Not searching aimlessly, searching for something familiar, something known. I hated how attuned I was to it. I hated how it made me feel. I told myself to stop, to step back, to breathe. But then he'd walk in, wearing that easy smile, ask how my day was, and something inside me shifted again. One evening, our hands brushed as we cleared the table. Just a touch. But it lit me up. He apologized. I said it was nothing, but my skin burned for minutes afterward. Then came the goodnight hug, software lingering a second too long, just enough to stir everything I didn't want to face. Just like before, and still it stayed. A single moment stretched into something more. It was only a moment, but it gave me warmth, and reminded me what it felt like to be seen. Truly seen. That's when the turmoil became unbearable. Because I am his stepmother. I helped raise him. I've known him since he was 10 years old. I watched him grow. And yet, a quieter voice inside me whispered, he is not a boy anymore. And you're still alive. It hurt to admit that. The weight of silence. Overlooked birthdays, brief exchanges with Greg, each one chipped away at something inside me, something tender and human. 2 years ago, I waited all day. For a call, a message, even a passing happy birthday. Nothing. That evening, I made dinner. I told myself it didn't matter. I lit a candle and whispered a quiet happy birthday to myself. He walked in, asked what was for dinner, and turned on the television. The cake sat untouched. He never asked why I seemed tired, why my voice trembled. That night, I cried in the shower. Not because of his forgetfulness, but because I wasn't surprised. Since that day, I've felt like I've been drifting, present in body, distant in soul. I need to say this aloud. I've become emotionally entangled with someone else, and I'm struggling. The connection crept in slowly, deeper than I could have ever predicted. I feel guilty, confused, but I can't deny it any longer. Preparing meals, folding laundry, existing. Emotions had become a memory, a performance I'd forgotten how to give, until Liam looked at me that way. Now my heart races when he enters a room. I change shirts before dinner. I wonder what he thinks when he sees me. Is it kindness, curiosity, or have I simply invented it all, a fantasy born from the void? I watch him searching for something in his smile. He offers to help with groceries, lingers in the kitchen long after he needs to. But I can't ask. I'm afraid of the answer. What if it's all in my mind? What if I've mistaken longing for connection? But then again, what if it's not? What if the silence between us isn't really silence, but something heavy and unsaid? There's a tension that lingers, a breath held too long, and guilt comes in waves. Late at night, beside a man who hasn't touched me in months, I stare at the ceiling, asking myself who I've become. What kind of woman lets this happen? What kind of wife? But then morning arrives and Liam walks in, his hair tousled, eyes soft from sleep. He asks, "Did you sleep okay?" And with just that, I forget every promise I made to myself the night before. In those moments, I'm not a wife. I'm not a stepmother. I'm not someone whose best days are behind her. I'm alive. And that terrifies me. But I'm also grateful. Our kitchen, once a place of routine, has become something sacred. A quiet sanctuary. A place where two people speak volumes through silence, and where my heart dares to remember how to feel. The second spoonful, 1610. In a sense, it always has been, 1812. Yet now it felt like a quiet agreement, 1815. A hidden truth that settled between us, soft and weightless, yet impossible to ignore, 1820. This kitchen, once a space of routines, had become an in-between realm, 1823. A place suspended between duty and desire, comfort and the unfamiliar, 1825. Liam began offering more support, not as a helper, but as a companion, 1829. He would cut while I mixed, 1831. Reach behind me to grab ingredients, 1833, his chest brushing lightly against my back, 1835. Not accidental, not obvious, just long enough to interrupt my thoughts. 1840. We moved in sync, 1842, as if rehearsing a dance we'd never learned, yet always known. 1847. He started sharing recipes, 1849. Forwarded little notes with captions like, "Thought you'd like this one," 1851. Things that showed he listened, really listened. 1855. One evening, after a quiet meal, he said, 1856, "Being here, it brings me peace." 1859. I answered before thinking, 1900. "It makes me feel seen." 1902. The words surprised me, 1904. I hadn't meant to offer them, 1906. But once they left my mouth, I couldn't take them back. 1908. He was silent, 1910. Then he looked at me, 1912. Deeply, 1913, as if peering through everything I kept hidden, 1915. "Me too," he said, 1918. That night etched itself into my memory, 1920. Not because of what was said, but what wasn't, 1923. The gentle brush of our hands reaching for the same spoon, 1925. The silence that didn't demand to be filled, 1926. The way he lingered long after the dishes were done, 1929. Greg was away again, 1931. A meeting in another city, one of many, 1934. Liam and I had dinner, just us, 1936. A little wine, 1938. Just enough to soften the unspoken, 1942. The meal was warm and full of laughter, easy and undemanding, 1946. Afterward, I revealed something new, 1949. A dessert I'd been quietly working on for days, 1954. He raised an eyebrow, 1956. "You're making me feel spoiled," he said. 1958. I smiled, something between boldness and ache. 1959. "Someone should," 2002. He tilted his head then, 2004, as if studying a painting he couldn't quite decipher. 2008. "You savor everything you create," he murmured. 2015. "Don't you?" 2016. I nodded slowly. 2018. Typically, 2019, he dipped the spoon in. 2022, I kept the rest inside. 2023. Yet, rather than tasting it himself, he leaned closer and held the spoon out to me. 2028. Here, try it, he said softly. 2030. I paused, though I knew the moment wouldn't last. 2034, I leaned in. 2035. My lips touched the spoon. 2037. His fingers hovered near mine, a breath away, as I accepted it. 2041. The flavor was rich, comforting. 2043. But it wasn't the dessert that stayed with me. 2046. It was everything that surrounded it. The space, the hush, the trembling truth we didn't name. 2048. The silence that followed was thick, deliberate. 2050. As though both of us were waiting for something to happen. 2053. Something neither of us had the courage to say aloud. 2056. His hand lingered. 2059. So did mine. 2100. Our eyes locked. 2101. Something passed between us. 2103. Gentle. 2104. Wordless. 2106. But real. 2109. He didn't move. 2111. And neither did I. 2113. We both stayed there, not reaching for a kiss. 2116. Not reaching for more than what already felt like too much. 2118. But someone had to break the spell. 2123. To name it, to call it wrong. 2126. To shatter the fragile magic. 2128. Yet no one did. 2130. And in that stillness, something unspoken became clear. 2131. The path we thought we were walking, orderly, defined, had already dissolved beneath us. 2136. 3 nights later, it happened again. 2138. The silence in the house felt cavernous. 2142. Greg was out once more, dining with clients. 2145. I stopped keeping track long ago. 2147. I sat curled on the edge of the couch, wrapped in a blanket. 2149. A glass of wine resting beside me, nearly empty. 2153. The TV flickered in the background, playing something I wasn't really watching. 2156. My thoughts were elsewhere. 2158. I clung to the smallest sparks of brightness. 2201. If only to soften a pain I couldn't name. 2203. Liam entered the room in silence. 2205. He didn't ask to be part of my world. 2208. He simply sat down. 2209. Closer than usual. 2211. There was no touch. 2214. But close enough that I could feel the space we shared. 2218. We remained like that for some time. 2221. Then, gently, he said, 2223. You seem low tonight. 2226. I didn't answer right away. 2228. I should have paused longer. 2230. But the words spilled out before I could contain them. 2233. I feel invisible to everyone around me. 2235. He said nothing, just listened. 2236. So I kept going. 2237. What I mean is, I do everything. 2240. I show up, I clean up. 2241. I keep the calendar, I buy the groceries. 2243. I remember birthdays and appointments and the kind of toothpaste Greg likes. 2247. And yet, I don't think anyone sees me anymore. 2241. I prepare the meals. 2243. I smile when it's expected of me. 2246. And sometimes I get this sense, 2249, that I could vanish completely and no one would even notice. 2251. He looked at me. 2252. I would, he said. I would definitely notice. 22:54. It wasn't just what he said. 22:56. It was how he said it. 22:57. Softly. 22:59. Without hesitation. 2300. With the kind of certainty that doesn't ask for permission. 23:02. He wasn't trying to comfort me. 23:06. He was just being honest. 23:07. I see you, he repeated, his voice quieter now. 23:13. More than anyone else ever has. 23:17. I looked at him fully for the first time. 23:18. The curiosity in his eyes was gone. 23:21. What remained was conviction. 23:23. In that moment, everything in the room shifted. 23:26. A lump formed in my throat. 23:27. I wasn't surprised. 23:28. In some way, I'd been waiting for this moment. 23:32. We didn't rush toward anything. 23:34. We just stayed still. 23:37. On opposite sides of a line we both knew existed. 23:39. A line we weren't supposed to cross. 23:42. But it had already happened. 23:44. In the ways that matter most. 23:47. And I regret not stopping it sooner. 23:50. I wish I had laughed it off. 23:52. Changed the subject. 23:53. Reinforced the boundary. 23:55. But I didn't. 23:56. Instead, I inched closer. 23:59. Barely. Slowly. 24:01. As though my body had made a decision my mind couldn't catch up to. 24:03. And he let me. 24:06. There was a fleeting moment. 24:09. One of emotional chaos and undeniable pull, interrupted quickly by the weight of reality. 24:12. In that brief, breathless instant, 24:17, I felt seen. 24:19, not as a wife, not as a provider or background character. 24:21, but as a woman. 24:25, alive. 24:26, and I need to say something. 24:28, something I've held inside for too long. 24:30. I've developed feelings, real emotional ones, for someone else. 24:34, and I've been struggling to make peace with it. 24:36, because nothing about it is simple. 24:41, but it's the truth, and I can't keep hiding from it. 24:44, it hurts to admit. 24:48, and then it deepened. 24:50. The feelings, the fear, the aching awareness that some part of me was waking up after being asleep for far too long. 24:57. And still, I couldn't bring myself to stop. 24:59. That moment, emotionally, had crossed a line I never imagined I'd approach. 25:02, and now here I was on the other side of it. 25:04. As we finally pulled away, the truth hit like a tidal wave. 25:08, sudden, crushing. 25:10. I stood up too quickly. 25:12, silent. 25:13. He whispered my name. 25:15. I couldn't answer. I was lost, confused. 25:17, almost terrified. 25:18. I couldn't even look at him. 25:21. I just walked away. 25:22. Down the hallway. 25:23. Into the dim light. 25:25. I closed the door softly behind me, shutting out everything. 25:29. I pressed my back against it. 25:31. Shaking. 25:32. My heart raced with panic. 25:33. My lips still tingled with memory. 25:35. I felt hollow and detached. 25:38, like my body had left without me. 25:41, alive. 25:42, afraid. 25:43. I need to say something that's hard to admit. 25:46. I found myself emotionally entangled with someone else. 25:50. And reconciling that has been excruciating. 25:53. I carry guilt and longing and so much uncertainty. 25:56. I know it's not fair to you. 25:58. I didn't seek this. 26:01. But I can't lie to myself anymore. These feelings are real. 26:04. I want to believe we can face this together. 26:06. But I feel stained. 26:07. And everything that held me together, 26:09, came crashing down. 26:11. The worst part? 26:13. I'm not even sure if I regret it. 26:15. Or if some part of me had been waiting for it all along. 26:17. The next morning, 26:19. He avoided me. 26:20. I felt it the moment I stepped into the kitchen. 26:22. The air had shifted. 26:24. He was there, but not really. 26:26. As I poured the cereal, 26:27, I stared into the bowl like it might offer clarity. 26:30, like it might show me a way out. 26:34. He didn't look up. 26:37. We passed the morning in silence. 26:40. He avoided my eyes. 26:41. And I didn't force it. 26:42. I agreed silently with whatever distance he needed. 26:43. I tried to mirror his quiet detachment. 26:46. Pretended not to notice the way his shoulders stiffened. 26:51. When I reached past him for a mug. 26:53. The silence between us was thick. 26:56. Not angry, just heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. 26:58. He finished his breakfast with mechanical efficiency. 27:1. Rinsed his bowl and walked out without a word. 27:04. There was no joy left in the room. 27:06. And I need to say this now. 27:10. I developed an emotional connection with someone else. 27:13. And every day since, I've been wrestling with that truth. 27:17. It's not something I ever imagined confessing. 27:18. But honesty, at least, feels like a place to begin. 27:21. There are no lingering touches. 27:24. Just absence. 27:25. That afternoon, Greg came home. 27:27. One hand on his suitcase. 27:29. Bluetooth still in his ear. 27:33. I talked to him about things I stopped caring about years ago. 27:37. He kissed my cheek like it was another item on a to-do list. 27:39. I didn't realize my smile was tight, forced. 27:44. He never asked how I was. And 27:46. On the stairs, he passed Liam. 27:48. Barely greeted him. 27:50. Everything continued as if nothing had changed. 27:54. I tried. 27:56. I really tried to keep the act going. 2800. But I wasn't myself. 2803. I started letting go of things. 2804. Quietly, deliberately, almost without noticing. 2805. I misplaced my phone. 2806. Repeated myself during dinner, asking the same question twice. 2809. I was there in body. 28011, but my mind kept looping. 28013, replaying fragments from the night before. 28015, disjointed moments I couldn't fully grasp. 2817, Liam didn't so much as glance at me. 2821, Later, while I folded laundry in the living room, 28:23, he walked in, 28:26. I felt his presence just behind me, 28:29, not moving, not speaking, 28:31, as if words were building inside him, 28:34, I refused to look back, 28:36, maybe I couldn't, 28:37, then he asked quietly, 28:38, can we talk? 28:40. I said, there's nothing left to say, 28:43. He paused, 28:44, then left, 28:46. The silence he left behind settled like dust, 28:49. The words I spoke didn't feel like mine, 28:51. They sounded distant, 28:54, like they belonged to someone stronger. 28:56. Someone colder, 28:58. But I wasn't her. 2900, I was terrified. 2902. A few days later we attended Greg's niece's birthday party, 2906, the kind of event I used to look forward to. 2910, I wore my best smile. 2912, dug out a dress I hadn't worn in months. 2915, added lipstick. 2917, curled my hair. 2920, told myself I'd hold it together. 2924, Liam was already there when we arrived. 2926, laughing with a woman I didn't recognize. 2928, young. 2931, fair-haired, beautiful. 2933, and here it is, the truth I keep circling, 2936. I've developed an emotional connection with someone else, 2949, and it feels wrong, 2941. I never meant for it to happen, 2943, but I can't pretend it hasn't, 2946. I know what it is, 2948, betrayal. 2951, I'm sorry for the hurt I've caused. 2953, I don't expect forgiveness. 2955, just honesty. 2956, just truth. 2958. And when she touched his arm, 30, laughed like they shared a secret. 32, it struck me like a blade. 3004, not because he moved on. 3006, but because I hadn't. Closing remarks. This story is not one of easy resolutions or simple choices. It is a reflection on the quiet spaces between loyalty and longing, between duty and desire. In capturing the subtle collapse of emotional boundaries, it explores the raw complexity of human connection, the kind that doesn't always fit neatly within the roles we are given. We are reminded that love, in its many forms, is not always clear-cut. Sometimes it arrives quietly, painfully, and without permission. And in those moments, we are forced to confront ourselves, not just who we are, but who we've become. This story doesn't ask for judgment, it asks for understanding. Vote of thanks. Thank you to the readers who have journeyed through these quiet but turbulent chapters. Your time, emotional investment, and open-mindedness give stories like this the room to breathe and exist in their full, uncomfortable honesty. To those who have ever felt unseen, unspoken for, or emotionally tangled between expectation and authenticity, thank you for finding echoes of your own truth in these words. And to the characters who took shape on these pages, thank you for your silence, your struggle, and your unresolved endings. Sometimes those are the truest stories of all. Disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or to actual events is purely coincidental. The narrative touches on emotionally sensitive themes, including infidelity, emotional neglect, and internal conflict. It is intended to provoke thought and empathy, not to prescribe or condone any actions or behaviors. Readers are encouraged to reflect on the emotional experiences of the characters with compassion and nuance. Understanding that fiction often serves as a mirror, one that reflects both the beautiful and the broken parts of our humanity.